This segment is brought to you by Diocese of Houma Thibodeau. Our mission is to form disciples of Jesus Christ. Hello again, everyone, and welcome to Bayou Time. On a very sad note today as we talk about the passing of our Pope, the leader of the Catholic Church, Pope Francis. And joining us today is Father Vic DeLa Cruz. Of course, there's Father Vic, good to see you, the coordinator for the clergy. It's always good to be with you, Father Vic. I've been knowing you for a long time, and thank you so much for coming on a sad note, but a very powerful note for the church as they move eventually to pick a new pope.
That's correct, and thank you for having me. And indeed, this morning we have heard from the Vatican that the Holy Father at 7:35 Roman time passed away and returned to the Father's house.
Let me ask you this, because he was waving to people 24 hours earlier, but if you follow him over the last few months and his sickness, and he was getting frail, it's almost like he saved just enough energy to go say goodbye. And then when he got back, he just let himself go to the Lord.
I think his task was over, and the role of a shepherd, the Pope, bishops, and priests is to rally our people after every Good Friday. See, Good Fridays are those periods when people suffer, when they are faced with difficulties and challenges. And our ministry is to rally our people, to raise their spirits up. And once you have done that, then you can go in peace.
Yeah, and it was almost symbolic, like he might have been holding on to a past Easter. You know, he didn't want to, I say this in a very sacred way, he didn't want to trump the Lord, not on Easter Sunday.
You said it right.
Yeah, so he waited a little while. You know, there are four parts. And it's very traditional in the church. So a lot of people who are not good with tradition, they may not like this. It's a very traditional process. It goes back to Peter, who was the first pope, and it certainly, there's a way to do it, but Pope Francis sort of changed the rules a little bit about how he was buried, where he would be buried. He wanted to be just a regular bishop.
Well, the pontificate of Pope Francis has always been going back to the basics. And that's what he introduced to us in his short term and time with us, that the church should not be afraid to go back to the basics where we started and came from, because the basics is how the church grew and how we continue to exist all these years. Modifying those what we call pontificals or celebration was a way to not only update the traditions of the church, but indeed, as you have said, to remind the church that we are close to the people of God.
You know, the four parts, first of all, there is the death of the Pope. And correct me if I'm wrong, I'm going to lean on you for a lot of this, but I think they go in and the lead cardinal who's in charge of that particular realm of it goes in and asks the Pope 3 times to say his name or state his name. And if he gets no response, then they declare the death with a few other things that go with it. Then there's the funeral process, then the conclave, which a lot of people are familiar with, in the inauguration and installation of the Pope, but all very traditional. And what I was learning through the cardinals that attend, it's over 200 cardinals that attend, but only 120 of them actually vote. Correct. So I guess it's a privilege to be there, but it's more of a privilege if you get to cast a vote.
All right. Yeah, in fact, this afternoon, before noon, I believe, Cardinal Batista Re, who is the Dean of the College of Cardinals, sent out the notification to all the cardinals in the world, summoning them to Rome for the beginning of first the preparations for the funeral of the Roman Pontiff, and secondly is to prepare them for the election, which we call conclave. So today, the invitation has been sent out by the Dean of the College of Cardinals.
Let me ask you, as a as a priest yourself, I know the anticipation for a new leader. It's got to excite all priests across the world. But then you get a priest that's chosen. And let's face it, in today's world with YouTube and Facebook and the paparazzi following you all over, not every decision a pope makes is going to be popular. Mm-hmm. It's going to be scrutinized, certainly because everybody has different religions and they're going to be under the microscope all the time. But how did it strike you when this pope was elected? He said, I don't want to be buried on the St. Peter's Basilica. I want to be buried under another basilica. I want to have a pine casket. I just want to be a regular person, just like the people that I'm talking to and preaching to. That's how I want to be remembered.
One thing we always have to remember is that for the hundreds of years, the election of the Pope always begins with the invocation of the Holy Spirit. So every Pope is elected because of that process. The Holy Spirit has something to do with his election. So all and everything he does, we believe, are somehow inspired and guided by the Holy Spirit. His personal preferences, opinions, and what have you, takes a back seat in favor of what the prompting of the Holy Spirit is. And in addition to his reflection, discernment, prayers, and consultation, he was able to offer us a solid guidance and direction on how the church should be proclaimed.
Let's do this. We'll take a break. We'll come back. We have 2 more segments. I want to learn more about this. It's so interesting because growing up, you hear about the Pope, you see the Pope. At HTV, we've had 3 popes there in our state since '85, and this is the 3rd funeral we will see from a sitting pope in our lifespan at HTV. We'll take a break. We'll have more with Father Vic DeLa Cruz with the Diocese of Houma Thibodeau when we come back. This segment was brought to you by Diocese of Houma Thibodeau. Our mission is to form disciples of Jesus Christ. All right, we are back with Father Vic DeLa Cruz, and of course he is with the Diocese of Houma Thibodeau, and he is the coordinator for the clergy. You know, as we've been talking during the break, it sort of struck me as that the decisions that still have to be made when a pope passes away, and I was trying to tie this locally. Like I know right now, we're still in need of a bishop here in the Diocese of Houma Thibodeau. A year and 3 months, year and 4, I'm not sure quite the time, but what happens during that time? Can a bishop of Houma Thibodeau be decided while we are trying to find a new pope?
That's an interesting question because we do not know what Pope Francis has decided before he passed away. So if he made already some decisions before he died, most likely they will be carried out. If that even includes appointment of new bishops. But if he didn't make any decisions then, everything will be deferred until the new pope is elected.
Yeah, so everything's so secret, so we don't really know, do we?
That's correct.
Yeah. It's so interesting in the Catholic hierarchy of how they do things. So when the Pope passes, and of course the cardinals become, for lack of a better word, the administrators of the church. But they don't really do any new policies, right? That's left for the new pope, isn't it?
That's correct. The same principle is followed in Houma Thibodeau with our administrator, Father Simon Peter. He and the dean of the College of Cardinals are in the same job description. They can simply do operations and maintenance of the church. Major decisions are deferred. So there are no innovations could be done in the absence of a pope or a bishop.
We were also talking, Pope Paul VI is the earliest pope that I can remember as a young boy. And me and you are around the same age. So was Pope Paul VI your first recollection?
That's correct.
Okay. Then, of course, we had John 23rd.
Yes.
And then, you know, a few others. But I would venture to say there's not too many news desks on the air where they got to talk about the passing of 3 popes, and we've had that at HTV. Just an interesting story. My nephew got married to a beautiful young lady, and they do their honeymoon at the Vatican, go to Rome. I don't know how it all transpired, so I'm going to paraphrase. But anyway, he somehow runs into a group of priests, and he expresses his interest in meeting the Pope. And one of the priests takes his name and does some different things. And in conversation, either there or a little bit after, he asks my nephew if his new wife has a white dress and if he has a suit. And he says, yes, we do. Well, he gets a call to meet at a certain place, and he gets to go up and meet the Pope. And he takes pictures with the Pope. And we always had this thing in our family that, you know, we'd always name drop as, you know, Martin, did you ever interview this person or this person? Well, yeah, I did. Well, he sends me a picture of him with the Pope, him and his wife with the Pope. And he says, beat this, Uncle Martin. So I said, I can't beat that one. Only way I could beat that one is if I go up and meet God or St. Peter at the gate. But that tells you that this Pope didn't take things so serious that he was stuck on himself. He was still open after all these years.
Interesting, too, is that I've heard similar stories like that. In fact, one time he met a group of pilgrims from Louisiana, and when the Pope asked them where they're from, and when they said Houma in Louisiana, the Pope smiled a big smile and said, and how is Mario doing? We found out that Bishop Mario Dorsonville, our former bishop, and Pope Francis were good friends.
Really?
And they are on the first name basis.
That's amazing. You know, well, of course, Bishop Mario would have never let anybody know that.
That's right.
You know, humble.
Humble man.
Yeah, got to be humble. Let's talk about, we're in 9 days of mourning now, right?
Correct.
And that's going to, of course, go for 9 days. What happens in that process?
Today, actually, the Office of Liturgy at Rome will issue what we call Novendiales, the 9 days of mourning, where masses will be offered for the repose of the soul of the Roman pontiff for 9 days until the funeral mass. And these 9 days, the supplication for the repose of his soul will be celebrated by designated officials of the Vatican and in all the cathedrals in the world, because just like any human being, the Pope too needs our prayers and our supplications. After the 9th day, they will celebrate the funeral mass for the Holy Father at St. Peter's Basilica at Rome, where the whole world will be able to participate. And then that will be followed by the interment, which you already have alluded. The Pope requested to be buried at St. John's Lateran Church, which is the official church of the Pope in Rome. And after that, then it will be followed by the beginning of the conclave.
All right, we'll take a break. When we come back, we'll talk about the conclave, and we'll talk about some other things that the Pope wanted to do that were different. So we'll take a break. Father Vic DeLa Cruz is with us, and we're sadly talking about the passing of our Pope, Pope Francis. We'll be right back.
This segment was brought to you by Trapp Chevrolet. We're always on your side.
All right, we're back. We're talking about the death of Pope Francis, and I'm with Father Vic DeLa Cruz of the Diocese of Houma. He's the coordinator for the clergy over there. And, you know, there's just so much to talk about, but we talk about the anticipation of a new pope. Everybody gets wrapped up in the anticipation. Will the black smoke appear? Will the white smoke appear? That's a big deal, not only to Catholics, news media. Everybody gets involved. And we were talking, I'll just ask you the question. I'm sure the Vatican puts a little drama on it because they're getting a lot of attention when they're about to make this decision.
There's one thing about the Church at Rome is that we have been taught through the centuries that the Catholic Church is not about issues. We are not issue exposed or dependent, but we are cost oriented. And so whatever happening in the world, Rome and the Holy See does not want to be distracted by that. As you already have said, we do have a lot of rules and procedures and traditions that goes back centuries, and we follow that. And that's one thing about Rome. We have a saying at Rome when I was there that La Chiesa in Roma pensiamo in secoli. The church in Rome thinks in centuries. So nothing changes that quickly. We follow the same thing over and over again because the consistency of the practice is what gives the church credibility.
This Pope chose to be buried elsewhere. He's not going to be buried in the traditional spot where I think 90 popes are buried, including Peter. And he's going to go elsewhere. So once again, and I hear he might have an open casket for all to view. Is that what you're hearing?
We have heard so many things, but one interesting about Rome, as we already said, the secrecy is very top importance. And so the details of many of the arrangements will not be made known. What we usually get will be simplified instruction and information that we simply follow and to some degree apply.
So the conclave, I am sure the cardinals, although they portray calmness and want to be calm for their people, when they get in there, this is some serious work going on, and this could take days or years. We hope days, right?
Hopefully days.
Yeah, because that'll move the process along. And it just, I just love the red. You know, remember when Bishop Mario's funeral was going on and you see the red, the cardinals come in. It's just so prestigious, isn't it?
Red is the color of the cardinals, and also red is the proper color for the death of a pope. That is exclusive to them, because it always symbolizes the blood of the martyrs that they are called to shed, that the Pope and the cardinals of the church should be ready to die for the sake of the gospel and for God's people.
For a priest, a man like you who's given his life to God, what's this mean? When you wake up and you hear that a pope has passed, what goes through your mind?
Well, first thing is sadness, because the Pope is always our father on earth and our spiritual leader, and he's the one who kind of leads us, strengthens us, encourages us to do our ministry. And without a Pope, you kind of feel somehow something is missing there. And to top it all, we don't also have a bishop right now. So, in fact, I was sharing with some friends that in the 34 years of my priesthood, this is the first time I'll be celebrating Masses without being able to mention the name of a pope or a bishop.
That's very telling. You know, it really is. Has it ever happened before?
At least in my priesthood, this is the first time.
Yeah, that's amazing. So I guess we can pray for a new pope and a new bishop.
That's good.
So we could have double prayers going on. What would you like to leave our audience with as we watch this process unfold to keep the process sacred?
To keep this whole process sacred is for us to really remember that this is part of the actions of the church, always inspired by the Spirit. That as Bishop Fav, our former good bishop, always said to us that we're all in this together. That what's happening in Rome is something that involves us. We're part of it. And this is indeed the continuation of what, as Peter and the former apostles and popes have done through the centuries. This apostolic tradition is unbroken and continues on, and we're so privileged to be part of it.
You know, don't try to call your cardinals because they're in secrecy. They're cell phone blockers. They cannot talk to anyone. This is as secret as it gets. Father Vic, I want to thank you. We're going to be watching to see how soon we get a new pope and continue to watch for a bishop. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for your knowledge. We appreciate what you do in our diocese, and always good to see you. And thank you so much. And keep us posted along the way. I might bring you back up here.
Thank you so much.
All right. Once again, Father DeLa Cruz, we appreciate him coming on. A lot of knowledge here. Take a break. We'll be right back.
This segment was brought to you by Terrebonne Ford. Built Ford tough.